What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka Ferst Report. It is Tuesday, October 20th. Time to change it up on you here with episode 3 of the Changeup with my co-host Bryanna Winner. You can find her on Twitter at bwinner12. How are you doing today, Bryanna?
I'm good. I'm ready for this World Series to get started.
Amen. It is that time of year. I'll tell you what, 3 or 4 months ago, I would have thought you were a little crazy or very optimistic to think that we could get here. It is obviously not the World Series we're used to, traveling and a full packed stadium, but it's what we get. And of course, after a really interesting LCS, we will get to that in a moment. But before we do that, let's just give you a quick little reminder to wherever you are listening to this, make sure you like and subscribe and leave us some comments. Let us know how we are doing, I should say. And if you want to let us know how you're doing too, that's cool. But wherever you're listening, like and subscribe so you get all the new stuff as soon as it drops. And make sure you follow myself at Ferst Report, FERST, and of course Bryanna Winner at bwinner12, and all of our stuff and the rest of the Ramblin Gamblin Sports Network, which we are happy to be a part of. You can find all of that at Gamblin and on YouTube. Ramblin Gamblin Sports. So now that we got that taken care of, it is time to talk about the LCS. And look, the division series, I think we kind of got used to it. I think there was a couple years ago, we had 2 game 163s, and all the division series went 5 games. That only happened once this season. This postseason, the Rays and Yankees were the only one to go 5 games. The entire National League was swept away by the Braves and Dodgers. So the LCS gave us double game 7s, which was absolutely amazing. The Dodgers, unfortunately, get it done. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, we'll start with the Astros-Rays series that started really well. I think all of baseball was very, very excited to see the Rays jump out to a 3-0 lead, but obviously the Astros fight back to force a game 7, and luckily for all of baseball and justice everywhere, really, the Astros were eliminated in 7 games. Bryanna, what were your thoughts on a ALCS that was probably way too close? I know for both of us, it was way too close.
I mean, I was really hoping that it didn't get that far. The Rays should have closed it out a lot sooner than they did, because I think we were all worried, like, oh no, are the Astros going back? And they're about 500. Like, they were a 500 team this year. Like, they should not have made the playoffs in the first place, but obviously because of the new playoff structure for this year. But come on, Rays. You should have gotten it a lot quicker. You were up 3-0. You gave up 3 games to tie it up and then finally won. Like, come on, you could have given us a heart attack.
It's interesting to
me. We don't want heart attack.
I wonder, and I don't think this is the case because you don't do this. Your competitors go out there, they're going out to finish them off right away. But I go back to, I believe it was the 2013 World Series. The Rockies faced the Red Sox. The Rockies swept whoever they had faced. I want to say the Diamondbacks, but don't quote me on that. Anyways, they had swept their way to the World Series. The Red Sox went 7 games. The Rockies had 8 days off. And that really affected them. I truly believe that. I think they've even acknowledged that. Now, we're in a situation this year where the postseason has really been a war of attrition for a lot of these managers. You don't have the normal travel day. You don't have a day off during the series. Now, the World Series, you will get the normal days off. But up until this point, you were playing those 7 games in 7 days. That is difficult for managers to deal with in a postseason situation, 7 days in a row. But I really do think, obviously, like I said, I don't think the Rays purposely made this go 7 games, but I do think it will work in their favor. I think the rest, at least extended rest in baseball, is devastating. If they would have been able to take 3 days off, I think it would have been ideal. Anything more than that, you get into the rust factor here and there. And look, it was a season that was only 60 games plus whatever 8 to 10 that they've played plus. Not a ton of wear and tear on those bodies in these warm summer months, but the Rays get the job done. They head to the World Series for the first time since 2008 when they fell to the Philadelphia Phillies. The Rays are in search of their first World Series in their 22-year history. That's a pretty good, I'm not going to lie, from where the Rays were pre-2008, if you would have told me 2006, in the next 14 years, the Rays will go to 2 World Series and win a couple division titles, I'd laugh in your face and ask for odds. But anyways, moving on to the National League Championship Series, and as well as the American League Series Championship Series went for us personally on this podcast, the National League Series went the opposite. The last time we did this show, we were in the middle of the Braves getting ready to go up 2-0. They were in the middle of their game. They were going up 2-0, and they ended up getting up 3-1. And you can insert all the Atlanta team memes you want. You can bring up the 28-3 Falcons and everything the Falcons have done even this year and really pass. You can throw in the Georgia Bulldogs in there as well. But the Atlanta Braves, no doubt about it, they choked. And for me, the series, I believe, changed when Walker Buehler got out of the bases loaded jam. And we talk a lot about how strikeouts are now just accepted. I remember when I was playing Little League, if you struck out looking, no matter what, the umpire could have made the worst call ever. You still had to run laps. If you struck out looking, they just didn't want you to do that. Now, strikeouts are a part of the game, but this is where it comes and bites you in the butt. When you have bases loaded, nobody out, and a guy like Austin Riley comes up, a notorious strikeout hitter, it's not going to end well. Your thoughts on the Braves Dodgers championship series that sees the Dodgers win yet another National League pennant?
Well, first,
amen.
Yeah. I mean, obviously neither of us wanted the Dodgers. Like, obviously you're Padres, I'm Angels. At least I'm not in the same division, but we still have to play each other. And only the Angels made it over the Astros. So close. Then we wouldn't have had this issue versus the Rays. Amen. I mean, either way, Angels wouldn't have made it.
No.
Either way.
They would have been out in the first round.
I mean, yeah, but at least the Astros wouldn't have made it.
Amen.
I mean, obviously the Dodgers have been the best team in baseball all year, but I mean, again, 60 games. I mean, that's nothing. Obviously, they probably would have gone a little downhill with injuries, probably halfway through, like most teams. Probably after the All-Star break, it would have gone maybe a little downhill, but obviously they'd still make the playoffs no matter what happened. Although your Padres would have had a much better chance. But I mean, we both hate the Dodgers, but we got to commend them for their big bats and their fielding. Obviously, Mookie Betts stealing that home run. I forgot who it was, and then now he's a meme just based on his reaction afterwards. Obviously, I don't want them to win. I want them to choke like they did 3 years ago. I really don't think it's going to happen, but
yes.
Obviously, we all wanted the Braves to win. There's no doubt about that. We all wanted the Braves to win, and they were up, and they were looking pretty, like the Rays did until they kind of dropped another 3. But I mean, it is what it is. The Braves at least now have some hope for next year after making it this far. Same thing. Obviously, I'm not going to say the same thing for the Astros because they sucked this year. But I mean, it's going to be an interesting World Series no matter what happens.
Yeah, and this series, the defense, I'm glad you brought up the defense. It's not too often that really it was only a 2 or 3 game stretch that when you say the Mookie Betts catch, you have to clarify. I mean, and I know which one you're talking about, but just the point of he had made so many unbelievable plays. We go back to the shoestring catch where Marcell Ozuna just forgets how to tag up. And I'm sorry, Marcell Ozuna, if you can't find the base, just stay on third, pat yourself on the head, go, guys, I'm sorry, that was stupid, but you got to give that next batter a chance. That was frustrating. But Mookie Betts' home run saving catch in Game 7 could go down as possibly this generation's, Willie Mays catch. I know it isn't the same catch, the over the shoulder catch. I obviously go back to the Jim Edmonds would be the one that would be comparable to that. This is a incredible piece of defense, and I really think that's the strength of the Dodgers, which is crazy for a team that set records for the league championship series in terms of home runs. You see Corey Seager with the most home runs in a championship series ever. This team hit 16 home runs in a 7-game series,
including Bellinger's walk-off.
Okay, so yeah, exactly.
Bellinger's walk-off.
Yeah. And that's how they finished it. It is very fitting, unfortunately. And like you said, we have to commend the Dodgers. I don't like the Dodgers. I wish them on the field, I wish them nothing but failures. But they are the best team in baseball, but the Rays have always been the number 2. Obviously, they were the number 1 team in the American League. You can make the case that, okay, maybe the Braves were better than the Rays, but that doesn't matter because the 2 best teams in baseball pretty much all season are now in the World Series. And I will say this, for the Braves, this is now a 2nd year in a row where one of the biggest, I know the biggest turning point of Game 7 was the 5-6 or 5-2-6-3-5 double play. That was the worst base running you could ever see, to the point where you have runners on second and third, nobody out, and you're running on contact when it's hit to the third baseman who's playing even with the bag. And then to compound it,
I wouldn't do it.
Sorry?
Well, I wasn't the best runner, but I wouldn't even do it.
Exactly. And then to compound the issue, Austin Riley on second base, the minute that he sees, I believe it was either, I think it was Dansby Swanson. It was Dansby Swanson goes on contact. And the minute that happens, Austin Riley needs to get to third base no matter what. You stand on third base, and if Dansby Swanson's also on third base, you make the umpire tell you which one's out. And that point, it would be Austin Riley. But Austin Riley holds in the middle of second base and then allows them to tag Swanson, and then all of a sudden Austin Riley is now caught in no man's land. Austin Riley needed to just book it to third base, no questions asked, or stay on second base. One or the other. You can't be in no man's land. Completely change the complexion of the game. Really, the mistakes for the Braves on the base paths and the fantastic outfield defense for the Dodgers was the difference in this series. Dodgers and Rays beginning tonight. That's going to be a real good series as we dive into that. Now, obviously in Arlington, to a small amount of fans, I believe 10,000. What are your thoughts early here on the World Series as we get ready for something that's the Rays and the Dodgers, a situation where you have the biggest market team versus David versus Goliath, really?
Yeah. Well, let me go back to when you said that obviously people are going to think the Braves are better than the Rays. Look, they are in 2 separate divisions. You cannot compare the 2. One's in the American League, one's in the National League. You really cannot compare them. Obviously, they played each other a lot this year, and the Braves obviously took it most of the time. But the Rays don't have to face the Dodgers ever until the very end. The Braves do. There's no contest of which of those teams are better because one's in the AL East and one's in the NL East. You can't do it. And going into the World Series, I really don't know. I really don't want the Dodgers to win, but I think they are. I mean, I think the Rays are going to make it close, and I think it's going to go 7. I really don't want the Dodgers to win, but I don't think there's any other way unless they completely choke.
I agree. That's a very real possibility, folks. I mean, we're not
2-3 years ago. Look it up.
I mean, every year pretty much. I mean, honestly, we go back to last year and Clayton Kershaw in Game 5 of the division series. And I put more of that on Dave Roberts leaving Kershaw in, I believe it was either the 6th or the 7th inning, to face Juan Soto. And that obviously went downhill. Yeah, there's the bobblehead. But Kershaw,
I'm not a Dodger fan, but I still have one.
Kershaw gets the ball in Game 1. He's been really good this postseason. Obviously against the Brewers, he was lights out. against the Padres, not dominant, but not terrible either, and was pretty good against the Braves in the LCS. Now, the Rays are kind of, I don't want to call them a gimmick team, but they're kind of a bit of a gadget team, like in football, where there's a lot of different things that they're going to throw at you. There's a lot of shifts that you probably aren't going to see if you don't follow the Rays. Now, you've probably seen plenty of games if you've watched this postseason, but if you're unfamiliar with Kevin Cash and the Rays, it's a lot of unorthodox, very interesting and out of the box thinking. Four-man outfields, shifts that you wouldn't really imagine, and all of a sudden it works perfectly.
About the shifts,
mm-hmm.
This year I could not stand them, like especially with the Angels because they put it on the wrong batter. I hate the shifts, but I also hate ITB more, which thank God we have not seen.
Yes, well, that should be done. I don't think we are going to see the ITB ever again, unless, God forbid, we're in another situation like this season.
Or watching softball.
Or watching softball. That's fair, but I think that ship has sailed in the softball realm. You're just stuck with that one,
unfortunately.
But in terms of what the Dodgers and Rays bring to the table, and Kevin Cash, Dave Roberts, two very analytical teams, and the shifts. Look, I've always been a proponent. They get very frustrated in the last 4 or 5 years, mainly this postseason. I've never seen so many hits right back up the middle that 10 years ago you're going, okay, that's a base hit. And here it's right where the second base or the shortstop is set up. The analytics have it right. And I'm one of those people that they need to practice their bunting. These guys, if you don't want the shifts to be shifted, or they don't want you to shift on me, then I got to learn how to put a bunt down, period. And the minute I put one bunt down, or maybe two bunts down, even if I don't beat them out, all of a sudden you're not seeing as many shifts. But that's, I think, a pride thing. And a lot of coaches now, they would rather just, hey, you know what? I'd rather you hit a home run every 4 tries instead of you striking out. And that's where we are. Unfortunately, baseball has changed. Old man yells at cloud rant is now over. But for the Rays and Dodgers, two different teams, obviously, but both set up similarly, both analytic based. But I do expect more than likely game 2 for the Dodgers. And at some point for the Rays, we are going to see a opener bullpen game, if you will. Like I said, I expect that tomorrow for the Dodgers. No announced starter for the Dodgers game 2. Buehler will go game 3. Kershaw and Glasnow today. And look, Tyler Glasnow, I don't know if he's the ace. Aces aren't really a thing really with the Rays. Everyone kind of has their role. And they have all gone up to it. Who do you think has the edge in starting pitching? Now, we obviously know that it'll be Kershaw game 1 for the Dodgers, Buehler game 3. At some point, we're going to see Urias, Gonsolin, and May start some. And same thing for the Rays. We know we'll see Glasnow and Snell, but we will see bullpen games here and there. But in terms of the just starting pitching staff, I guess really both of these teams really only have 2 starters that we know of. But in terms of those, who do you think has the advantage there?
Dodgers. I hate to say it, but Dodgers.
Do you think the fact that, because the Dodgers, I think some of their best hitters are lefties. And I think when you can kind of control Dave Roberts, for me, one of the scariest batters on the Dodgers is Jock Peterson. I know he's not a guy who hits 350 and, is a great contact hitter, but if you can throw a lefty out there, that at least guarantees that you can go 3 or 4 innings, or at least 2 times through the lineup, that you're probably not going to see Jock Peterson because he struggles so much with lefties, and Dave Roberts loves the platoon with him and Pollock. It's interesting for me to see I would have loved to see them face a Soroka in the league championship series, but I'm really excited to see them face 2 real top-notch starters. And I really do think Tyler Glasnow is top-notch, but I agree with you. I think the Dodgers have the advantage, if only for experience sake. With all due respect to Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow, it's not a situation they just don't have. They've never been in the World Series. Kershaw and Buehler obviously have. Buehler at 26 is a seasoned veteran at this point in elimination games. Easier for me to say, but I agree with you. I think that the Dodgers have the advantage starting pitching. Now, bullpen, I believe, I'll start this one off. I believe is a different story. I think the Rays have better bullpen really all the way throughout, whether you talk about the bridge guys, the lefties in there, or even the guys late in the bullpen. I think the Rays are kind of a bunch of, it's like Kevin Cash says, I got a stable full of guys that throw 98. And that's what it is. There's a bunch of guys who are making, 1.5 million to the minimum, and they're all going out there doing their thing. They know their role. You're going to see Diego Castillo close a game out one day and then come in the fourth inning the next. There's not really a quote unquote closer for the Rays, but I still like their bullpen better. Who do you think has the better bullpen?
I mean, look, the Dodgers, their bullpen has imploded multiple times in this playoff, and I don't see it being any different. Obviously, Kenley Jansen has had some very lucky games, but he chokes. Like, no doubt about it. He has choked so many times in the playoffs. Like last year versus the Nationals, I believe he was the one that gave up the grand slam to Howie Kendrick.
I'm not 100%, but I believe that's possible. I'll look that up as you continue.
So obviously, I think the Rays have a better bullpen. With the Dodgers starters, I mean, yeah, you've got Kershaw, who's been playing for years, who's got experience. And I think, and then you've got Buehler. I think experience is what's going to win those games with those two, because they've been here before. They know how to calm their nerves. They know how to handle it. Whereas obviously with the Rays, it's the first time in 12 years. They're not going to know what to do. They're going to have so much excitement and adrenaline that they're going to make mistakes, especially in this first game, which is why I would say Dodgers in game one. And the Dodgers already have their lineup up and set. The Rays have not yet. But for the Dodgers, I think Mookie Betts is also a scary one, because he'll just get on base. He doesn't care what he does. He just gets on base.
Yes. I would, just to kind of preface it, when I talked about Jock Peterson, I don't think Jock Peterson is the most dangerous player in the Dodgers lineup. He's the most dangerous player that you can control in terms of whether he starts or not. Him, Kike Hernandez, Rios, Barnes.
He's starting.
Yeah. Oh, he is?
Yeah. So I've got the Dodger lineup up on my phone. Obviously, the Rays do not have a lineup out yet, but you've got Betts leading off. And then you've got Seager, Turner. I don't understand Muncy in the 4th spot, because he's only batting 192. I really don't understand why he's in that spot. And then you've got Smith, Bellinger, Taylor, Peterson, and Barnes. So the only 2 players for the Dodgers that are under 200 is Muncy and Peterson. Obviously, Peterson hasn't started that much, and he struggled. Same thing with probably most of the league. If you look at the freaking Cubs, they struggled all year in hitting. But with Muncy in the 4th spot, I understand him leading off, but in the 4th spot, I don't think he should be there. When he hits, yeah, he does great. But if he's not having an on day, you're screwed, because your 4th spot's supposed to be cleanup.
Yeah.
You're screwed.
I honestly kind of like him where he is now, obviously 191, and I don't know if you can pull it up but I believe his on base percentage should be pretty high. He's worked some really key walks, at least
720.
Yes. And I think I like it setting now you're right. The cleanup, you're not exactly asking your cleanup man to, oh yeah, I have Max Muncy there because he loves to walk. Not exactly, the quote unquote way to play the cleanup book, if you will, but he worked a lot. And Will Smith, he was struggling until I believe game 3 of the National League Division Series against the Padres. He had 3 or 4 hits in that elimination game, has been on a tear, obviously had the game-winning 3-run home run a couple nights ago. He's been on a tear. Bellinger, look,
we talked about his walk-off already.
And it was a great home run. But the one thing I will say with Bellinger, going from MVP to pretty much 6th in the lineup, and he struggled. His swing is way too long. It's easily exposed. Now, obviously, he took a mistake pitch and made sure that the Dodgers were going back to the World Series. So he's obviously very talented, don't get me wrong, but his swing is a little too long. So I actually like Bellinger down there in the 6 hole, but you're right. In terms of Max Muncy, I'd even prefer Bellinger there. He's at least going to give you more of a pop, at least a power potential, and can work the walks the same way Muncy does. And just looking at the lineups, obviously Mookie Betts, I mean, with all due respect to Mike Trout is the best baseball player on the planet, but Mookie Betts is the best baseball player on the planet that plays in big games. No offense to the Angels, but I mean, Mike Trout's played in 3 games, playoff games in his career, and he's lost every single one of them. So it's tough.
And going back to the lineup, you have in this lineup, you only have 2 players that are over 300, and that's Seager and Turner, who are in your 2 and 3 spot. Maybe I would have put Muncy in a 3 spot, and then maybe one of those 2 in your 4 spot. Just maybe switch it up a bit. I know Roberts likes doing lefty, righty against certain pitchers. I'm pretty sure that's not the case tonight. But yeah, I probably wouldn't have put Muncy in the 4 spot. Yes, his OPS is 720, but your 4 spots there to, like, if you've got runners on base, their goal is to get them home. Like, whether it's hitting or not, you do not want them to strike out when they're in the 4 spot.
Yeah, you would want at least an 850 OPS for your cleanup man if you can help it. Obviously, if you don't have
that or a batter over 200,
I know they do have someone with an OPS over 850. I guarantee
that,
it. But
that or a batter over 200.
Yeah, a very, very odd situation there, but it's worked for the Dodgers. And they are so reliant on the home run this year, in the postseason, especially in the LCS. And obviously, they are a team.
To be fair, all season everybody's relied on that home run ball.
Yeah, well, I look at a situation, and obviously the Cardinals weren't the poster people for, self-control or even success this year, but that team, and it's but that was a team that they grinded out at bats and station to station baseball. We don't see that too much anymore, and very similar to, bases loaded, nobody out. In the world of baseball that we live in, that pitcher knows, hey, I can strike out the side right now and it's no big deal. It just adds 20 pitches onto my lineup or onto my pitch count. But looking at the Rays lineup now, obviously we don't have anything out yet. They are a team that's going to kind of play the platoon situation as well. They haven't really had a set lineup throughout the entire postseason. I mean, the Dodgers have, for the most part, now interchanging Pollock and Peterson or Barnes and Smith, whether or not they're using the DH or not. And for the Rays, they balanced their lineup so well. I've absolutely fallen in love with G-Man Choi, who is just, he's so much fun to watch play baseball and just react. He's a big teddy bear. He's watched his Instagram live video of when they beat the Yankees, and he was smoking a cigar in Petco's dugout and kicking the trash can as a nice little wink to the Astros. So it's one of those things where for the Rays, we won't really know probably until the absolute latest. Kevin Cash isn't going to let us know when that's going to happen or who is going to be starting or where they will be. But the Rays have to have, in my mind, I believe, an inferior lineup to the Dodgers. I wish it was any other case, but in terms of the lineup and the bench, the Dodgers are going to have an advantage now. The Rays pitchers need to focus on keeping the ball out of the happy zones. If Mookie Betts and Corey Seager and Max Muncy can string 3 or 4 hits together, you tip your hat and you give up the 1 or 2 runs, but you cannot leave pitches out over the plate and allow these teams to, a lot of times with 2 outs, pick up 3 runs with 1 swing of the bat.
Going off of that, look, we've seen so many batters this year, obviously Tatis being one, Trout being another, where you pitch 3-0 to them, and then all of a sudden there's a pitch right down the middle in the sweet spot, and it's gone. Like, that's definitely something you cannot do, especially in the World Series. I mean, yes, the Dodgers have a better lineup. If the Rays can just keep their pitch counts low each inning, if they can keep it out of the strike zone while still getting them to chase after them, then they should be fine. I mean, it all depends on which quadrant of the strike zone that people love to hit more. And obviously, these coaches are going to have looked at past games, at analytics, at everything, because they want to win. Like, no doubt about it, they want to win. I really want the Rays to win, but I do not think it's going to happen. But I mean, yeah, if you look at the lineup, the Dodgers have the hitting, they have the power. I mean, they have people that'll just get on base by walks. It does not matter. And that's probably the best batters you can have, is just batters that know, hey, I need to get on base, whatever it takes. Whether I get hit by a pitch, whether I walk, whether I hit. Bunting should be used more. Just don't do what Hosmer did. I'm never going to let you live that down, by the way.
Nor should you. Nor should he. He should live with that for the rest of his life. I'm sorry. That was ridiculous.
It should be a meme by now. I mean, obviously the Rays don't have a chance in the lineup, but they're going to do their absolute best. They want to win. They've had a few days off, whereas the Dodgers only had one, really. So maybe that'll make a difference. But their pitching needs to be on. It doesn't matter with defense at this point. If your pitcher is off, you're done.
Yeah.
I mean, we have seen it so many times this year where the pitchers have done absolute shit. And even with their defense doing well behind them, the pitchers are the ones that are giving up the runs, and it's not good.
Well,
if you look at Ohtani in his only 2 starts this year, the defense was great. The pitching, on the other hand, was not. So they need to control the walks.
That's a great point that you bring up. When you give up home runs, you know what you don't take advantage of is the great defense that the Rays have. We talked about the great outfield defense for the Dodgers. Now, I don't think Corey Seager's a good shortstop, but the overall, I think 1 through 9 or all the defensive parts, the Rays have the advantage. I think they are by far, they might be the best fielding team of all of baseball. I mean, when they were going up 3-0 on the Astros must have felt like there were 12 men on the field. It was incredible. There were times where Hunter Renfroe, Manny Margot, those guys were making incredible plays. And then you had great plays on the infield. Seemed like every other inning, they needed a double play and they got it done. So when you give up home runs, you are not allowing your really good defense. I don't care how good your right fielder, your left fielder, your center fielder is. If it's 25 rows up in the seats, that's gone. That's a run no matter what. So keep the ball in the ballpark. Let these great defenders do what they need to do. And that's really something that we got to keep our eye on for the postseason, as unfortunately my gardeners have started to weed whack. So I'm going to pass it over right now to you, Bryanna, while I get up and go shut my window. Can you let us know, because not everybody's been, I think it hasn't been in a whole lot of people's purview who have been following baseball, has been, of course, the unfortunate situation of Tyler Skaggs last year, him passing away, and kind of more the story of how it all came about. There was a bit of a development this past week. Can you give us a little bit of a synopsis of what happened this week while I go shut out my gardeners?
Will do. So obviously Tyler Skaggs passed away July of 2019 of an overdose of a dangerous mix of drugs and alcohol. And this last week, they finally got an indictment on Eric Kay, the Angels employee that gave the drugs to Skaggs. Obviously, he has not been charged yet, but this indictment was supposed to happen 2 weeks ago, and they've been putting it off due to Kay's legal defense trying to say, hey, I think it was like insanity, maybe. I think is what they were pleading. They were working on a plea deal, and they never came to one. So as of right now, he has been indicted. They are going to work on the charges soon, but he could face up to 20 years just for giving Skaggs that lethal dose of drugs. I think it was fentanyl.
It was fentanyl. And that was honestly, I believe for me, one of the first times I actually stopped and researched fentanyl, which now, I mean, I hate to say it, but when you hear a drug overdose, it's unfortunately more often than not, there was fentanyl involved. it's just so unfortunate. Obviously, Tyler Skaggs losing his life, and first and foremost, the saddest part of this. But when you do dive deep into it and you see kind of the organization, now this Michael K, I believe, Eric K. Okay, the Michael K is I think Michael K is a play-by-play guy. So Eric K, Eric K is obviously the person that is going to be tried and justice will be served upon him, but it was not him, not only him, and this was an organizational situation where really you saw it in the offseason, obviously Joe Madden coming in, but really cleaning up the organization. Like I said, it was a very, very tough spot. And the Angels in the last 5 or 6 years have just had some really heartbreaking stuff. I go back to Nick Adenhart, who was a fantastic young pitcher. I believe either the night that he was hit by a drunk driver, he threw a shutout or he pitched incredibly well. I don't know if it was major league debut. I don't know why I should.
It wasn't,
but he's
08. I think it was in 08.
Yeah. And it was young though. It was one of his first, I believe it was his first year, but he was such a top prospect for the Angels. And obviously, driving home from the game, he gets hit by a drunk driver. 09 gets hit by a drunk driver. Dies. I mean, just so tragic. And then we have this Tyler Skaggs. Now it's obviously a little bit of a different situation, but the Angels this past offseason really, besides struggling on the field, went in to clean up their organization from a legal sense, because the DEA, I mean, weeks, maybe months after Skaggs passing, it came out that the DEA was looking at the Angels organization as I don't know if it was a sensationalized headline. It probably was, because the world we live in, but they were categorizing the LA Angels as a drug ring because it was so prevalent in the organization. Obviously, Eric K is the one who is going to be tried, and it will all come out. Hopefully, got to have faith in the justice system. Do you? Who knows? That's all you can do, is have faith in it. But at the end of the day, the real tragedy is Tyler Skaggs losing his life, and really all of his teammates, whether knowing or not. They lost someone, and I guarantee you, and I know they all said how much it affected them.
Yeah, and with Nick Adenhart, it was in 09, and he was only 22. So obviously it's a case of somebody dying really young. I mean, we've seen it over the last few years, especially of car crashes. I know CSUN had a student that got into an accident and died within like a few months ago, and it was only 19, 20, 21. I mean, it's a tough situation for an organization to be in. Yeah, car crash is one thing, but an overdose is something that's a lot worse. And it shouldn't have happened in the first place. Obviously, they should have caught it a lot sooner, and maybe Skaggs would not have lost his life. And I mean, it's just a tough situation for them to be in. I know they're trying to rebuild, and based off of that, obviously with Madden coming in. I mean, to be fair, they did win that game the next day.
Yes, no hitter.
Yeah, a combined no hitter. So, I mean, at least they won for their teammate, but obviously they didn't know the circumstances yet. I don't know if there were any other players involved. With Eric K, otherwise, I mean, Eric K is going to get the justice that's deserved for the Skaggs family, obviously, especially for his wife, who they had only been married for, I think, about a year at that point. So, I mean, the Skaggs family is going to get their justice. And they were like, yeah, he doesn't do drugs. And then obviously they found out that he did. And it just was an unfortunate circumstance.
Very much so. And I do, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if, I'm not quite sure how it will go, but the people that were also involved are probably the key witnesses for the prosecution. They were probably the ones that were picked up first and cooperated, and all fingers pointed at Eric K. He will, that will be something we will follow. This will not be the last time that we will talk about that situation. But look, let's be honest. They're not going to talk about that on the World Series broadcast tonight. They're not going to lead off with it on MLB Network, but it is still a baseball story. So it is our duty to bring it up. And it is obviously very close to Bryanna, and really, hey, I'm Southern California. And really, if you're a baseball fan, a young man lost his life in a situation that could have been prevented. So it should really affect everybody. But we'll make our final predictions. I think you already kind of did with the World Series. Going with the Dodgers, how many games do you think it's going to take?
Unfortunately, yes.
How many games?
7.
7? Okay.
I think it's going to take 7.
I'm going to go Dodgers in 6, actually, and I can't wait for next week for us both to start the show and go, guess what, everybody? We were wrong. Hopefully that's the case.
We hope we're wrong.
So yes, that's kind of what I'm going with here too. You know, I've gone against the Dodgers when we picked, just because I hate them so much. Maybe going with them this time, switch up the mojo and switch and maybe throw a wrench in the Dodgers' plans. But look, I really do think the Rays are going to perform better than I actually believe. I'm a little worried about this. I was thinking about it prior to both of those game 7s going off, wondering, because look, if the Astros had won, and I know it's a moot point, but if the Astros had won, I would have had to cheer for the Dodgers. That's how much I hate the Astros. I hate the Dodgers. But you know what?
I think everybody in the country hates the Astros except for Houston.
Yes, and it's a situation of, like I said, I hate the Dodgers, but at least they didn't get caught cheating. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to think that, you know, the Astros and Red Sox were the only teams doing those things. I'm not that naive, but you're not cheating unless you get caught. It's just the fact of life. That's just all there is to it. Dodgers never got caught, so they were
unless a former player rats you out.
Well, but then even then, so even when Mike Fiers ratted out the Astros, it still took an MLB investigation for them to, find out, okay, that's when you get caught. But, it could be, if Andre Ethier comes out in 5 years and says, hey, this is what was going on, we'll see. But the Dodgers,
that's obviously procedure.
Yeah.
That's obviously procedure. They have to investigate anything that comes forward. So, it took some time, and they really should have gotten a much worse punishment. But it is what it is. It's past now. Let's just be happy they did not make it to the World Series.
Exactly. And there's even stories of last year's World Series. The Washington Nationals had different signs for everything in Houston's ballpark because they knew this was happening. This was months before the bombshell reports came out. They knew it was happening. They just adjusted to it. Baseball, once they find out about something, they'll just adjust to it. But I like the Dodgers in 6. I hope I'm wrong. I really do want this to go 7 games. I want 7 more games of baseball. This has gone too quick. So I do want to see that, but Game 1 tonight in about 3 hours. It'll be 8:00 Eastern time, 5:00 Pacific. Do the math in between there. Final thoughts for episode 3 here of the Changeup, really the World Series preview edition.
I really do not want the Dodgers to win, but I think they are going to, unfortunately. And after what they went through in 2017, they kind of deserve it. They should have won that World Series against the Astros. And we all know how that turned out. But this is probably one of the best Dodger teams in the last 10 years, to be honest.
I agree.
So I think they have a better chance than the Rays, but I would love to see the Rays win their first World Series ever.
I think the Rays have a better shot than what I'm giving them, in all honesty. But is it enough? I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how they face Kershaw. If they can get to Kershaw early and get those memes rolling out, I think that would be very, very interesting. But the Rays are going to give it a shot. I don't think this is going to be a sweep by the Dodgers. I think the Rays will end up getting 2, who knows, maybe 3, hopefully 4. But yeah, we're pretty much unanimous here on this podcast that the Dodgers will get it done either in 6 or 7 games. We both hope that we are wrong and that we can celebrate a Rays first ever World Series championship. And for the Dodgers, look, it's just because they're there every year. It's been since 1988.
Yeah.
Not a great year because they won it, but also because that was the year I was born. So What was that?
One thing to add.
Yeah.
Obviously Lakers just won.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe it was the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yep.
That won the Stanley Cup. So either way, one of these two cities are going to get their second championship win this year in this very weird season.
And, I mean, the Rams and Buccaneers are long shots, but both of those teams are good enough to, who knows? I mean, the Buccaneers.
But that's February. That's a different year.
Sorry?
That'll technically be a different year.
Technically. Okay. Well, that's always the, what year is
okay. Think about it this way.
But
how about within the last few weeks, they could have their second?
Exactly. So very, very interesting there. Someone's going to get another parade, or I guess in Tampa Bay's situation, the boat. They were doing it out in the boat, which was pretty cool to see that. So we'll see how the World Series goes. We both unfortunately expect the Dodgers to take it, but thank you all so much for listening to episode 3 here of the Changeup, the World Series preview edition. Once again, make sure you follow us on social media and make sure that you like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Let us know how we're doing if you have any questions or anything like that. For Bryanna Winner, my name is Brandon Ferst, aka Ferst Report. Thank you all again so much for listening. Have a wonderful day. Now go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. Take care.